another. And I just want to say too, before I make a couple points, and recognize our board members who are here. If you guys don't mind standing up, I know it's a little embarrassing, our board members. Our board members have dedicated, countless hours to this organization, especially this year. We've gone through quite a few changes in the past 6 months, and so I know this program has been on a hiatus, so we're really excited to revive Science Uncorked again and see so many people here. It's one of several educational events that we do. One of our other large events is California Wildlife Day in March, so I hope everybody comes to that. Our mission is restoring the watershed and the river, conservation for the community as a whole and the ecosystem. And we do many other restoration projects. We have a watershed health report card where we monitor the health of the watershed and then implement projects based on that. And then one of our other pieces that we do, which we're focusing on tonight, is advocacy around wildfire management, fuels management. And so we're excited. This is very topical for this time of year to talk about fuels management and wildfire. And we're really excited to have two great speakers. I don't know if is Emily going first? Is that true or no? Should we decide? Emily, whoever has an empty wine glass has to go first. So we could put on, I'm sorry, Pam, I should say we have a speaker who is online, and then Emily is here with us live, and Emily is the fire and fuels management specialist at Santa Lucia Preserve. So we're really excited to hear about the projects she's been undertaking, the work she does at the preserve, learn something from that. And then one other thing I should mention, if anyone's interested after the talks, we have the watershed map here. So that'll give you a sense of like where we are in the world, what we're talking about. And then we have some toolkits that were created around vegetation management, drought and flood management, and wildfire resilience. And then we also have this one, which is just a little bit more about our organization, all the projects that we do if you want to learn more or contribute. So thank you again, everybody, for coming and, enjoying wine with us. And we'll get started with Emily. And Emily, if you want to say a couple words about yourself too, feel free. I didn't say much.
So thank you everybody for showing up today. I know it's been rough outside with the perfect weather and all the sunshine. So you might have a little bit of a hard time seeing some of these slides, but we'll get you through it. My name is Emily Aiken, and like Abby was saying, I'm the Fire and Fuels Management Specialist for the Santa Lucia Preserve, which is just over yonder. I'm going to help orient you in the place and how it relates to the Carmel River watershed. So I'm going to talk to you today about using remote control masticators as a method for wildfire fuel reduction. And it's interesting, it's a little ironic because the only thing I can't remotely control right now is my actual presentation. So that's why I've got to kind of work the mouse. So I use these story maps, and I think they're fun to help show some good visuals. So let's take a look here on where the preserve is. Again, I'm sorry for this. I tried to make the maps look really cool, but they're too dark for the screen. So this is the Monterey Peninsula right here. This is Point Lobos right here. And then Big Sur is to the south. The Los Padres National Forest, northernmost point, is here. And this is the Santa Lucia mountain range. Carmel Valley Road runs right along here. So this is the Santa Lucia Preserve. It's a 20,000 acre conservation-minded community that is located in high to very high fire hazard severity areas. So that means that we have very steep and rugged terrain, and we are prone to having wildfires. In this location, the thing that's highlighted here are our major roads. So that's one thing that we're going to focus on, because what we use the masticator for is for roadside fuel breaks, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Now, how does the preserve fall into the Carmel River watershed? Here is an example. Let me see. There we go. So this is the Carmel River right here. And then you can see that there's several streams and rivers that run right through. And this is from afar. There's a lot more high resolution streams that it's pretty hard to see, but as you know, a lot of the topographic headwaters out here will have some of those tributaries. So with that being said, one of our goals at the preserve is to help protect these streams and rivers from what catastrophic wildfires can present post-wildfire. And that means that there's a lot of landslides, there's a lot of erosion, and those things can be carried down to the Carmel River, which supplies about 100,000 residents across the Monterey Peninsula. So it's hard to see this map, but let me just turn on this layer here. There's these burn scars that come up. This is the Sobrani's fire, and these yellow lines are containment lines that were used to keep the fire contained from advancing towards the river. And then over here is the Carmel fire and the river fire. So we have a history of major wildfires, especially from the southwest of us. And we plan to use these strategic areas for the roadsides and these historic containment lines to help prevent and strategically fight the major wildfires that we expect to see in the future from causing catastrophic damage to our environment. One thing I forgot to mention is that the Santa Lucia Preserve, it is a conservation-minded community. There's 300 parcels and half of them are built out, so there's 100 homes. But there's also the Santa Lucia Conservancy. I know Scott Hennessy is on their board as well. But the Santa Lucia Conservancy manages 10,000 of those acres, and then they have easements on an additional 8,000 acres. So 18,000 of the 20,000 acres are to never be developed. They are to be preserved in perpetuity, meaning that this area is ecologically very important to us to maintain and preserve from something like a catastrophic wildfire. So that's another reason why we're doing this type of work. So moving forward, I want to introduce you to Chewy. Chewy is a remote controlled applicator. It's a track carrier that has a forestry mulcher head on it, and it can take on vegetation size up to 6 inches in diameter. So as a lot of you know, we get a lot of this dense chaparral, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But CAL FIRE awarded us on a wildfire prevention grant to have this piece of equipment for 5 years to use on the roadside fuel breaks. And then after that grant sunsets, we get to keep Chewy.
Whoa.
Yeah, $200,000 piece of equipment we get to keep.
I need that at my house.
Yeah, Chewy's are really, really great. So some of the unique attributes here for Chewy
Give it to them. Yes.
is
You missed a spot.
I know. So I do want to highlight, this was our training day. This is the first time I got to use Chewy. And one of our goals, this is one of our holding ponds. And you can see we're trying to preserve evaporation by adding discs and things like that. But we wanted to just create a space to walk around the pond because it had overgrown. So that was one of our missions for our first training day. And one of the unique attributes about this particular thing is, one, you do not need a special certificate to drive heavy equipment. You don't need to put an operator on there, especially when this thing can take on 50-degree slopes. So it has hydraulic tracks that come out to adjust for the slopes.
Really?
And now you can go, and I talk about Zen gardens, you know, little rigs. This is my Zen garden. So and we're out there and there's a bunch of chaparral and I'm just roving that thing. It's pretty great. But so it has these rubber tracks that are considerably light-footed compared to traditional mastication equipment. And when we're talking about fuel reduction for wildfire, mastication is a very, very common methodology for that. And this is an innovative tool to do it better. So,
0.0 slope.
yeah, 50-degree slope,
That's serious. Whoa.
very steep. Okay, so that's what the company pitches, but in the last year that we actually used Chewy, we really are a little more conservative. So like 30-35 degree is what we're comfortable with before it starts to like give a little fit and it'll stop and it'll leave and things like that. So I gotta talk to the company, but that's not on the top of the list. So why do we use mastication as a fuel management tool? It's because it changes the fuel continuity from vertical to down to the ground. We are trying to reduce flame lengths and we are trying to reduce ladder fuels to prevent things like crowning fires. And especially this, it's hard to see right here, but this is old growth Manzanita chaparral. And you can't walk through that if you try. It's got a lot of dead, dense woody material. And when it catches on fire, typically the rule of thumb is that flame lengths are double what they're on fire, but given slope and wind, they're going to be way bigger, triple, quadruple flame lengths coming off of this right here. And the firefighters can't walk through it. So this here, you can hardly see it, but I'll show you more examples. This is a product of what Chewy does. He takes this and brings it right down to the floor. So we get some dense Manzanita chaparral, and we also get several other habitat types. So here is that pond I was telling you about on our training day. Here's what we did.
Oh.
And you can see that we took out a lot of the shrub here.
Yeah.
That was just one day, you know, we're having fun with it. And then here's some more projects.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hope's masticator is not as hardcore as this one. They have to, but you know, everyone's whenever we use this, we get a lot of landscapers that come through the preserve and they're like, whoa, what's that?
I know.
Yeah, so you'll see them more and more, I'm sure. But so here's an example of some of the work we did on top of the Chamisol Pass. And this is as steep as we can go right here before it really started to get uncomfortable for the machine. So the goal is to
That was cool. Yeah. We should hold it.
That was kind of fun.
So I apologize if it gets a little warm in here. I'll try and make it short.
No, we'll do that.
But
Yeah, good job.
that's good right there. Okay.
Good job.
That's fine. Okay, thanks guys.
Thanks, Erin.
So what you plan to do is just to do the areas by the road, not up on the hills.
So this is the start. We just implemented Chewy just under a year ago, and we started from scratch a whole new mastication program. So we're learning as we go. Chewy has 290 machine hours. The only other people in the peninsula that have this is Pebble Beach, and they contract out with CAL FIRE. So CAL FIRE uses these, but there's a lot more people that are planning to use them. And as we learn about the wear and tear, what they're capable of, the average acres we get in a day, depending on habitat type. So
How much have you covered in that year of removal?
I'll get to that. Whoever asked that, I have an image for that exact question. So we'll get there. Yeah, there you are. Here's another example. When we were training, we went to someone's property to help them with their defensible space.
Sure.
And you can see here that coyote brush, if you don't maintain it, it grows very, very fast and it becomes very dense and flammable. So at this home, we got a chance to use Chewy and take out that coyote brush.
Good job.
And here you can see along a road that was covered by dense Manzanita chaparral. And now you can feel a little safer driving by this driveway versus that right there, where you can barely open your car door.
Well, sorry.
Yeah, what's your question?
I have a question. Answer it later, you have to answer it in your program, but as Chewy goes through It's on the heavier brush, the larger pieces, maybe 16 singles.
Yeah.
Do you remove any of that slash, or is it well enough to stay in the ground?
It literally chips everything down to the ground. In a way that you don't need to offload any of the material. So one of the pitches in our grant was that this actually reduces your carbon footprint because we don't have to use transport to offload any of the material. We're not burning any of it, so we're not creating more O2, or I'm sorry, CO2. So with this, we leave it on the ground, and I'll talk a little bit more about what that means to leave all those chips on the ground. Here is a really great video that CAL FIRE provided us of the recently done coal break work along Chamisaw Pass. We try and bring it out as far as we can on either side of the road, about to 100 feet. And then what does it look like when it recovers? So the thing about the masticator is that it does something called vertical mulching. So as it grinds, it doesn't go very deep into the ground, if at all. It doesn't remove any of the roots. So it actually mixes a little bit of that mulch into the very, very top layer of soil. And that prevents erosion. We just had a soil engineer come out and check out our treatment sites, and they confirmed we had 0 erosion. We also had major storms with over 13 inches of rain right after we did this, no erosion. So it's a really great tool to use. And granted, we're not doing this work right now by any riparian areas. We do have fuel management standards for working in riparian areas. And to answer your question, we do not work within 50 feet along any bank sides of any streams or creeks. In addition, we don't do any work in those corridors at all. So with this is just a month after this area. You're already starting to see some soap plant come up. And here is about the same, around the same time. So this is a manzanita root that, so a lot of the chaparral species that we have resprout vigorously from the roots. So we keep the roots intact, and then before you know it, they start to regrow. And it's manzanita, chaparral, coyote brush. A lot of those plants will just grow right back. And here's an example of that. This is the manzanita. This is about 2 months after treatment, and it's already several inches tall. And I kept hearing this like, well, chaparral grows about a foot a year. I do not think that's true anymore because this is only 6 months later and it's almost waist high. So with that being said, the chaparral grows back very fast. You've got monkey flower, chamise, manzanita, and you can see that everything is much less flammable. It's got a lot more moisture content, and we've removed a lot of that old growth wood that would otherwise cause more intense fire behavior. We're getting really great results from using Chewy. And this is our team right here learning how to maintain Chewy. Fortunately, we have an in-house mechanic shop. And when something happens to Chewy, I get the guys, they come help me out in the middle of the day, and then I get right back to it. We have a place for Chewy to stay. We're getting a trailer that is field supported, so we can just leave it out there with fuel, with all the things we need to take care of Chewy, and it'll just rove the roadsides. The plan for this is a 5-year rotation along all of our major roads to make sure that we don't have that problem of overgrown brush again. What happened in the past is we would hire out contractors and it would be very haphazard and it's very costly. So now we're increasing our in-house capabilities to maintain our own roadside field breaks. And in addition, down the road, we're going to maintain those historic containment lines as well.
Where's that massive vineyard?
What?
That massive vineyard back there.
Vineyard?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, so this is actually, this is a retainment pond. And I know it's hard to see, but I wish, but the retainment pond, yeah, we put these like floating discs on there that are supposed to prevent evaporation.
It's for sale right here. If you want.
Right. So Chewy's job for now is to focus on our roadsides and to make sure that any fires like Sobrani's cannot advance towards all of our neighbors and our precious watersheds. In addition, what I'm doing right now is I just submitted a grant to get Chewy's brother, which will be called Chippy, and it'll be a beaver, which I was going to tell you.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll leave.
The theme is herbivores with sharp teeth,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
so with that being said, we're really trying to just grow and enhance this because it is a lot of work. It is 20,000 acres, and we want to make sure that our residents and our neighboring communities are safe to leave, and our firefighters are safe to come in and strategically stop those fires from advancing. The preserve in general is in a very strategic location for essentially it's a major fuel break for any of these areas north and northwest and to the east of us. With that being said, the Chewy dashboard, so we track and monitor what Chewy's done, and we try and keep track of how many hours, how many acres, how many days, to just get a better idea of how to maintain this program in the long run. And I think you were mentioning, what was your question one more time?
Well, in this period of time that you've been utilizing it for about a year, what's the coverage? So it looks like you've had 54 days, and what is the total?
37 acres.
In
Whoa.
54 days, but you've been using it for about a year?
Yeah, since April of last year. Just I guess a little over a year now. But so it's a mixed bag because when we're working on Chamisol, it's super dense chaparral in super steep areas. So we get maybe a half acre a day. But if we're in more moderate slope and it's just coyote brush, we're going to get an acre plus a day. So we've averaged it out, and I've got 7 people that are trained up to operate Chewy. And I'm in the grant that I submitted, I'm getting a full-time operator because our operators are already working in other departments, so I can't get them full-time. So moving forward, we have the opportunity to have Chewy's brother kind of tagging along before those things become overgrown again.
And then the full-time up.
Yeah.
So it will run 8 hours a day then?
Yeah. So on a full tank of gas, it runs 5 hours. We'll have the transport fuel cell that'll grant it, 6 to 7 hours of full machine hours a day.
But you can run it. I mean, you're just gonna run it every day. Just
Yeah,
keep
every
on
day.
going.
Yep. Yep. It's a really hardy piece of equipment. What was your question? Or
I just wanted to ask about bay trees because
Yep.
I understand they've got one of the deepest root systems. At least that's what I have been told. So that's great for erosion, but
Yeah.
recently I was just kind of experimenting with weeds, and it was almost like a firecracker.
oh yeah.
And so I wanted to ask about that in terms of
So
fire and erosion and all that, how we should think about that. I guess the other thing is in proximity to the bay trees or the oak trees. I understand that is part of the. Yeah, so just wondering if you comment on that.
yeah, that's pretty much my talk. So I'll answer questions now with the. Dang that cool breeze. So,
Put a case of wine in front of it.
yeah,
It's long term.
it'll be much happier.
Oh, you just opened it.
With the trees and how it relates to mastication, we don't really deal with bay trees as much as we do oak trees, redwoods, and madrones and things like that. Mastication doesn't target. You can come in. Yeah, you're fine. Mastication doesn't target anything over 6 inches, so we're not really taking down trees with this particularly. But in any event, no matter what tree type it is, you really want to reduce that chance for fire on the ground to get up into the trees, and you're going to want to maintain that ladder feel and don't have anything growing beneath your trees, and make sure your trees are limbed up high enough off the ground, which is around 6 to 8 feet, to avoid flames from catching that tree on fire, and remove any dead, dying, or diseased in your trees. Another question? Yeah.
Well, my question is there any focus on the options that are
down on the other side of the preserve through Hitchcock Canyon, up, on this side of the Osborne Ridge.
Yeah.
And then up into the preserve, which is a back way out of the preserve,
Mhm.
but also an up way
Yeah.
out of people who are down in this little area.
So I know where you're talking about, and we don't consider evacuation routes towards Hitchcock Canyon because they involve off-road vehicles and things like that. So and not to mention that area hasn't burned for a very, very long time. So it's very dangerous if you do get sparks flying ahead of you. With that being said, the Resource Conservation District is working on a cross-boundary fuel break grant. And part of one of their fuel breaks comes in and out of the preserve in a big horseshoe shape on the top of Hitchcock Canyon. So that's something we really don't want fire to go into that area. And either way, I think the Resource Conservation District is a good person to reach out to, and Monterey Peninsula Regional Parks as well, since you're neighboring Garland Ranch right there. But we kind of focus on the boundaries within the preserve for the most part, as far as our field treatments go. Yes.
Did you trigger any CEQA or county permits or anything like that for this? I know you said you didn't go near the streams.
Mhm.
It saved you a lot of grief. Was there
Yeah.
anything else you had to do in permitting, or is it just
Yeah, so
land management?
fortunately with this, it's a fuel maintenance project. And given that it's maintenance, the work has previously been done and we're trying to just maintain it. So there is already a notice of exemption for CEQA that we have along our roadsides to maintain. So we don't have to get CEQA for this project. Moving forward, if we want to advance to other areas, especially maintaining some of our ponds that we have, we're definitely going to consider CEQA. And we also have our in-house rules and regulations as far as having a community out there goes. We have conditions of approval. So one more question for you, or? Yeah.
Do you consider like nesting birds at the time of the year when you use this and go in certain areas?
Yeah, so we have something called fuel management standards for the preserve that has been long existing since around 2004, 2007. And it talks about treatment in different habitat types. So when it comes to chaparral or those brush areas that we target, we avoid springtime for those areas, given the fact that birds are nesting in that area. And the same thing with if we do work around any corridors like Rancho San Carlos Road, we avoid the wet season because we don't want any of that fresh stuff to go into the river. We want the plants to have a little time to reestablish before that happens, if it happens. So we just take those extra precautions there. Yeah.
Speaking of erosion, the one picture that showed your pond and then cut slope on the other side of the pond looked like it was like 35%. You didn't have any erosion on what grade slopes after that range?
So those slopes go up to 30+ degrees, and all of those slopes that we've treated have not shown any sign of erosion.
Even that, okay.
Yes.
I noticed it was really cool that you had left trees and bush downhill from that, which would, of course, assist in stopping.
Yeah. And a lot of the areas we've targeted so far are very far away from where they could end up. And there is a lot of those filtering capabilities for the standing chaparral we didn't touch to potentially prevent that. But like I said, there has been no sign of erosion since we've been treating these areas.
Okay.
Any other questions? Yes.
So I wasn't trying to trap you with that question. I'm an old retired person, but
No worries.
a lot of that, I'm with the HOA, I'm a representative, and we're working on that kind of stuff.
Uh-huh.
And there is a CEQA document that I haven't got a hold of yet for the mouth of the valve.
Mhm.
So I'm trying to figure out what people's criteria and stuff like that are, so that I can write better specs for the contractors. You know,
Yeah.
rather than just say, oh, clear this area up, that's too big.
Yeah.
You know, how far from the stream, what, I know the county regulations, so that's easy. So
Yeah.
I'm just trying to help myself figure those things out to write better specs.
If you want,
manage the future.
I'll give you an example of what ours says, and we basically kept it as like, we don't want to alter the ecosystem in a damaging way. We don't want to create erosion. We want to prevent that. So it just kind of talks about those things, not necessarily the details you're talking about, but I'll give you examples. All right, I'll let the next speaker go. Thank you. Yeah.
So all the stuff you're showing on the, is that on the Santa Lucia Preserve website?
It's on the Santa Lucia Community Services District website. So Santa Lucia CSD.org, or I believe that's the website. And I'll give you my card as well. But these PowerPoints and presentations are on our website. They're publicly available. The Santa Lucia website. So we're community. I work for a community services district at the Santa Lucia Preserve. And we are a public entity, but the preserve is not a public entity. So it's like a little confusing. And then we got the Santa Lucia Conservancy as well, who's a nonprofit organization that manages the wildlands. So there's a little bit of a mix up there, but yes, they're available and I can help you with that. And also there's stickers at the end of the table of Chewy. So take one for yourself or your kids or whoever would like a sticker. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. I was just gonna say too, for those of you who just came in to drink, you didn't realize how much you were gonna learn. Really good job, Emily. That was great. I also had a huge oversight. I forgot to introduce Erin Lawrence, who is like extraordinary of everything with the Watershed Conservancy. She helps keep us running on many different projects, including picking out projectors when they're falling. And then we have Pam Berstler coming into us virtually, and she's the CEO at the Green Gardens Group called G3, and she's spoken before at California Wildlife Day, and I thought the talk was really interesting. And it's sort of about it was about firescaping more at the individual property level, which I thought was helpful. And it's a for-profit membership organization of landscape professionals who are determined to save the environment by advocating for and implementing watershed-wise landscapes through workforce development projects, water conservation, and low-impact design, consulting, education, and community activism. So hopefully I did that right, Pam. And if you want to say anything else that I missed, please feel free. And thank you for coming in from, I think, Southern California.
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. Wish I were there. And next time we will definitely be in person, and I'll just, have a drink of coconut water in my hand and pretend because I don't drink and drive at the same time. All right. Anyway, it is really great to have an opportunity to talk to you all. I think I lost my, oh no, there we go. All right, so can you all see this?
Yeah.
I do hope so. That is great. All right, well, I put together a little presentation that really kind of brings us away from wildfire and talking about, the wildland itself and bringing it more to the urban wildland interface and also into the urban environment. There's a lot that has been happening in fire science over the last, 2 years. And, being here in Southern California, we have done an awful lot of thinking about this and research and so forth. And so I'm really happy to start talking about this with you. And I think really the issue here is that I'm talking about something totally different than what we were just discussing. I'm talking about how do we mitigate or prevent urban conflagration, hard word to say. And as it turns out, because this is the bottom line, right? From an insurance point of view, from a economic impact point of view, it's not so much the burning of wildlands, which in California burn. It's really the burning of urban and suburban areas where there are people. And So this is something that we really have to understand right from the top. It may sound controversial, but here it is. Urban conflagration has absolutely nothing to do with landscape. It's not at all about landscape. And in fact, it's not even about home hardening. Home hardening is an important part. I'm going to talk a little bit about that, some things that we need to be thinking about, and certainly things that insurance companies are pushing us into. But really, when we have these whole communities, you know, with all this density of living, there is no way to make it less vulnerable without really major rethinking the way we're living in urban and suburban spaces. So this is a great example. This is a place that has no landscaping, and yet the outcome of a conflagration here would be exactly the same as the picture that you just saw. So it doesn't, it really is something that we need to become a lot smarter about. And also, I think it's important for all of us as people who want to protect property and who own property and who are working with properties to have a language about landscape that allows us to have conversations with CAL FIRE, with insurance companies in particular, because really the insurance companies are driving all of this right now. So I want to just, you know, I promise you the slides are not all this boring. This is just to get us kind of in the right place. There are really three key issues that we are dealing with in urban settings when it comes to fire. Number one is setback. And I'll talk about that in a second, but setback is the defining issue that defines whether or not the property is going to burn. The second thing is if you have the setback, is the home hardened? So if you have a good enough setback and a hardened home, the likelihood of survivability goes up. And then after that, there are conductive landscape features that are being addressed right now in legislation. And that's really, I'm going to talk about those. And they are I don't want to say they're icing on the cake because that's not really it either, but they're a part of a package, but they're, as I said, not the driving part of the package. And the reason here is because most of the burning that's happening in suburban and urban places where there are a lot of structures are due to embers. And these embers are being born on winds that are, they may start even without, you know, not really as a result of the fire, but once the fire gets going in wildland or wherever it gets started, it has a life of its own and it actually generates its own wind. And so what we have to realize is that there are billions and billions of embers that are coming out of these fires. And those embers can go as much as 15 miles in front of a fire. I mean, you know, when you think about that, it means you could have a fire in an adjacent county and your house catches on fire. I mean, that is just kind of like, what? So this is why we need to really kind of be rethinking, you know, what it is that we're prioritizing with our hard-earned money in order to try to mitigate the risk here. The other thing about embers, which is worth mentioning, is that it often causes zombie fires. And I had you'll see that a lot of these slides come from Marin Fire District, and in talking to their battalion chief about this topic, he showed me picture after picture after picture of fires that were occurring where the firefighters have been in the neighborhood. They have successfully defended a neighborhood, and they have moved on to where the fire is, you know, seemingly going, and only to come back a day or two later and the houses are completely burned to the ground. And that is what we want to prevent. And we can do that with house hardening. So I'll show you in a second. So quickly, proximity, as I said, the most important thing, not much we can do about it without civic action, right? This is something that we have to make, you know, we have to be in agreement as citizens of our region to decide. Yeah. when a building is 10 foot away from an adjacent building, the radiant heat is just too great. Your building is going to burn 10 feet. When we increase that to 20 feet, now we actually have defensible space that could result in, if a house is hardened, that house withstanding the radiant heat from the burning neighbor. But within 10 feet, we have a problem. So what do we do in California, where we have all this press toward ADUs and greater infill and building massive homes, to property lines and all that sort of stuff, and actually reducing landscaping, in favor of these massive constructions? We are actually increasing the proximity and therefore increasing the risk that we're facing. Another thing that I want to just bring up is that even though I said that landscapes are not really, the thing driving the conflagration issue, they are actually one of the most important considerations for the bigger picture. The bigger picture is that by all of this dense building and the reduction of landscapes, we are actually creating heat island effect in our urban suburban areas. And those heat islands are contributing to a desiccation of our land. And that desiccation of the land, or dehydration, if you will. I mean, these are not, hydrological terms, but they're terms that people can understand. The dehydration of our land is reflected in what we call the small or terrestrial water cycle being broken. And basically, what this is, in just a quick nutshell, is the over terrestrial areas, the water cycle is absolutely driven by the plant community that is on that land. The plants, and also, but actually, let's just stick with the plants. The plants and their root systems are actually holding on to water and releasing water back into the atmosphere. And over land areas, so this is not influenced by the ocean, but over land areas predominantly, whether or not we have cool, cloud-filled skies and gentle rain is completely determined by how much and how dense and how diverse the plant communities are on the ground. And so as we have been reducing that diversity and density, we have created heat island effect, which not only is breaking the water cycle, meaning we're not getting the gentle rain and the regeneration of water in the landscape, but we're also getting hotter events, which directly are correlated with fire cycles. So this is the place that landscaping can make a big difference. In other words, we have to landscape. And if I needed to put another point on it, this picture does it. We need to find ways to bring as much cooling action into our cities and suburbs as possible, because cool surfaces condense water, hot surfaces evaporate water. We don't want hot surfaces. So the answer to this is something that we call the watershed approach. And I'm doing a plug on this because this is, after all, a watershed sponsored event. And the watershed approach is an approach to landscaping that is focusing on four things. But the three things that are most important to us today are building healthy living soil that acts like a sponge and that actually is a hydrated environment, capturing rainwater and holding as much rainwater as possible that comes off of our hard surfaces, holding it in the soil, holding it and delivering it to plants so that they are able to hold on to it in their root zones, and then selecting plants that are actually adapted to the climate so that they also can use their strategies for holding on to water and, even more importantly, cycling water into the environment. So those are the three key elements of the watershed approach that when we prioritize those three things in our landscaping, we are actually creating a mini watershed at our home that can be a lot more resilient. And that soil structure is the most important thing, because, by the way, not only does it hold on to water so the soil's moist, but it also means that our plants are growing optimally, right? They're not struggling, they're not sick. And also, when fire does come through, because I'm telling you right now that there's no such thing as a fire-tolerant plant, as a fire-resilient plant. When fire comes through at the temperatures we're talking about, they burn. That's it. They burn to the ground. What we want to know is, will they recover post-fire or not? And when we have good soil structure that is filled with moisture and so forth, and we have healthy plants, they recover from the roots. So that's the thing that we want to, make sure that we have in place. And then we want to make sure that we're capturing as much rainwater as possible, because this is what keeps our environment cool. Now, finally, this is the last of the boring pictures, boring slides, I promise you. I want to put it in the context of what we've been talking about this evening, that landscapes have to be designed and managed. So not just designed, but managed to not only reduce risk. That's really where the insurance companies have been focused, and where most of CAL FIRE's output in messaging is focused. But also, how do we preserve the environmental benefits that are leading to a more resilient future? So both of these things have to happen at the same time. Now, there are costs associated with this. And because of that, I'm going to just focus on the couple of things that are the biggest bang for the buck, if you will. So the things that are lowest cost and have the greatest impact, especially with regard to the ember situation. The most important thing we can do in landscaping our exteriors is keep our roofs, gutters, and bases of walls clean. I mean, that is, I am not kidding you, the most important thing. It's the cheapest thing to do, and it's the most important thing to do, because imagine those embers hitting something like this, right? You don't have a chance. The next very inexpensive thing to do is to make sure that all vents, both vents up, like attic vents and so forth, but also vents that are down at the ground, are covered with a fine metal mesh, 1/8 inch or smaller, not plastic, but metal. The idea is we don't want those embers going into an attic or into a crawl space where they become those zombie embers and they burn your house down 2 or 3 days later, right? That is what we want to prevent. And the only way to do that is by covering those vents up. And here you can see a great example of a vent over a crawl space that is perfectly done. And also, you'll notice that there's a 6-inch gap between the bottom of the non-combustible siding and the grade of the property. I used to think, why do they have this gap? I got to plant that. But no, actually, that gap is what preserves us in a fire situation, because the embers are going to gather there. And by the way, you'll also see that in this picture, the one fail is we have mulch up against the surface of the building. No, and I'll come back to that in a second, but that's totally not the right thing. The rest of it's great. Up on the gutters, we want to make sure we have metal flashing, we have drip guides, and we have gutter guards. These are very simple things. These are inexpensive things to be doing to the property. Of course, changing out roofing material is also great, but this is a very expensive thing, and so I'm not going to spend time on it. Another thing, because a lot of us have decks and things like that, we want to make sure that the tops of the joists on the decks are actually covered in some kind of a tape so that they do not burn. This is one thing that's big. Garage door, if you're replacing your garage door, boy, get a fire rated door. And also, if you have eaves, box them in so that there isn't a place for embers to sit. Also expensive, but if you are building new, or you're doing renovation, or you're building one of those ADUs, think about what the exterior is going to be, and make sure that it's some kind of Class A rated fiber cement, which is really the best choice, and cost wise. And don't forget to maintain that 6-inch distance between the natural grade and the bottom of the siding. Something to take a look at. Here's something that many people don't think about. When you paint your home or when you finish your home, don't be priming it and painting it with exterior paint. Why? Because when moisture gets in that, it peels. So you want to be using solid body stains as much as you possibly can. And if you do already have primed and painted exterior surfaces, you want to make sure that they're really well maintained. Take a look every year, you know, during the wet season, really, and just see, hey, do I have peeling stuff? Fix it. Because as I said, when there's 10 feet of separation between buildings, there is absolutely no way to keep buildings from burning down. Whatever all that hardening can be done, doesn't matter. But when you make 20 feet between buildings, now the hardening matters. Now let's talk about something called defensible space, and this does relate to landscape. And zone 0 is the thing that we've been hearing a lot about, and a lot of kind of misinformation about zone 0. It is essentially the idea that within 5 feet of a structure, we are not going to have anything that is going to be fuel for the embers. And so I want to show you this picture. This is where the 5 feet came from. This is the Insurance Institute for Builders and Building Business and Home Safety, rather. They do these tests, okay? And we could have a long conversation about the veracity of this kind of testing. But one thing that you can see here is that when there are billions of embers being blasted at a structure, the embers fall at 2 places. They fall right against the wall, at the base of the wall, and they fall 5 feet or so away, depending on how big the overhang is, the height of the building and how big the overhang is on the building. But 5 feet is about where those embers fall. So it's this testing that led to the creation of the California legislation about zone 0, which is being implemented right now. And you've probably heard all about it, given where you are. But I want to tell you, zone 0 is not a sacrifice. Zone 0 is, I mean, what's weird is I've been a designer and contractor for 30 years. I've always done this. So I'm like, oh, great, everyone's catching up. But zone 0 gives you the opportunity to walk around your property, to get out of your doors, to be able to have moving space. This is what zone 0 looks like. And doesn't mean you can't have plants, even a lot of plants, like within a very close proximity, like within 5 feet of your building. What it means is from 0 to 5, you don't have them. And so this is something that we really need to start to be thinking about. There are lots of materials that we can use. There's all kinds of porcelain tiles. There's stamped concrete. Now, there's decomposed granite. Now, one of the things that I want to encourage you to think about, you know, because we're thinking about this soil sponge, is how do we make it more permeable? Because, you know, the tile and the concrete and the decomposed granite are not very permeable materials. Flagstone, great material, but not very permeable. Don't forget this vent, and the picture was actually taken before they were covered, but those vents need to be covered in the 1/8 inch metal mesh. If you wanted to get more permeable, this 5 foot zone, the zone 0, is a great place for the judicious use of gravel. Gravel is a great material for working in the zone 0 area. Gravel, pavers set in sand, as an example. This is a very permeable surface. But now let's go just a little bit deeper, because even though this does sort of technically qualify for zone 0, it's got a lot of issues, right? We have this planter right against the house. I mean, it's a mid-century modern house with a planter there. What are you going to do? Well, you got to think about that. We have these mature trees that overhang or get very close to the structure. They come within that 5 foot zone. They need to be thought about. And one of the things that the zone 0 legislation is saying or not regs, but really regulations are saying is it's okay if you have mature trees and they come within that 5 foot. They need to be 5 to 10 feet above the totally clearing the top of the roof of the building. So this is for mature trees. They don't want you coming and hacking off a limb that overhangs the house and jeopardizing the health of a mature tree and making it so it's actually a bigger fire hazard because now it's, lopsided and uneven. So the regulations do have a consideration for mature trees. There's a fire break here, which is a good addition. But as you look, in this particular picture, and by the way, you'll see this is in my background also. This is a project I did like 25 years ago. But I use it a lot to demonstrate we can always improve on our zone 0 design. So here we have, a walkway that's going around the house that's permeable, but yep, it's planted against the house because there is a planter there. That would need to be renovated and turned into more pavers going around the house. We want to remove plants from zone 0. Like here is a great example. You see, this is burned. And what happened? Well, the heat was trapped underneath these windows by the plants that were planted there. We don't want to have that. We don't want to have plants that conduct just like in the whole discussion we just had about the wildlands, we don't want to have plants that are bringing fire to the structure, right? So that in this particular case, these plants are not the right thing. We don't have a gap between the siding and the ground. We've got, what looks like wood-shaped roof, not very good, and all these. But one thing we do have is we have boxed-in eaves, which is really nice, and shutters, which are good options. If we're planting new trees, we're going to need to rethink them. Now, this tree is a mature tree, and wait a second, Pamela, you just said they're trying to preserve mature trees. That is true. This one is not in a good place. This one needs to be either rethought, new tree planted, or perhaps, I can't see in this picture, it is limbed up way above the canopy of the, way above the roof. So the canopy is much higher than that. That is a possibility, but in general, this is not going to fly for zone 0. The other thing that's not good here is we have what are called conducted combustible materials. I'm going to show you more about that in a second. This is a great example of conductive combustible material. When we have wood fences, wood gates, decks, stairs, all that stuff that abut our buildings, we are creating a connectivity where the fire can start burning that particular part of the landscape and that structure and bring the fire right up into the home itself. So we really need to start rethinking. No more attachment of wood structures to the buildings. And so even though this picture is shown as an example of a good zone 0, we have these issues of the conductive materials. We've got a fence coming into it, a gate, and we have wood shingle siding, all of which are not good for fire safety. If we're going to do decks, they should be steel framed, if at all possible. No planting around them, gravel underneath them, and preferably enclosed with some kind of a mesh like that, the same way we're doing the vents. The wood on top really needs to be a hardwood with metal fasteners and so forth. And then covers, it's so hot, it's terrible. We don't want to be outside, without some kind of covering, but we need to think carefully. If we're building wooden structures that are attached to the building, we're bringing fire to the building. So these structures really do need to be metal. They need to have the plant material managed on them so that they're not conducting fire into the house. And then the thing I do want to say, and I'm wrapping it up now, is zone 0 doesn't have to be bleak. Almost all of the stuff that you're hearing right now about zone zero coming out of like the design community is, oh, this is a tragedy. It's the worst thing that could ever happen. I mean, no, not really. And also, I mean, it doesn't have to look like this. It doesn't have to be designed like this. I hope this isn't someone's home. I'm sorry. This is not someone that we designed, so I don't know. Apologies, but it doesn't have to be bleak like this. It doesn't have to be like basically a desert. And especially once we get beyond that 5 foot, we can have plant material. We just can't have dead vegetation. It has to be well maintained. So this means that grasses get cut back, things get mowed. They have their season, but then, they're managed. We're pulling plants away from the structures. This is a perfect example. It's more than 5 feet away from the home. It's creating a barrier to the street. This is perfectly fine. Like all this native plant material, wonderful. It's not touching the home. It's not within the 5 feet. And we don't want to be saying, okay, gravel's good, so then we should cover everything in gravel. No, this is absolutely the opposite of what we need to do. We need to be planting the heck out of everything past 5 feet. Why? Because we don't want to have urban heat island effect. That's what this makes. It makes it hotter. This type of landscape with the nacella, the, synthetic turf, the wheat fabric, the rock. I mean, it just goes on and on about how bad this thing is. This is actually bringing fire to our communities. Let's get rid of this kind of aesthetic and this landscape. We can have mulch 5 feet away from a structure. That's perfectly okay. But don't use a combustible mulch. Let's not be using rubber which explodes. Let's not be using, giant mulch that burns forever. We want to have well composted mulch. That is the mulch that has been shown to reduce fire. This is the one that we want to have. This is an opportunity as well in these areas that are 5 feet away to start directing rainwater into these areas and creating really permeable surfaces, like basically creating moats around our homes, which is a really great opportunity. And when we plant these areas, we can start thinking about using wide pathways as fire breaks, which does a bunch of things. One, it allows us to actually walk in the garden and enjoy our garden. It also creates access for firefighters. And this is an important thing for us to be thinking about when we get beyond that zone zero and out even beyond perhaps, the 5 to 30 feet mark. How do firefighters get into my property? How do they access it? One thing I just want to say, I say this in every presentation. If you have a gate or if you have a fence between you and a neighbor, no matter how much you love or do not love that neighbor, put a gate in it and give your neighbor a key. Sometimes the only way out of your home is through a backyard. Eliminate back-to-back fencing. This is probably one of the most flammable situations that we have. And this goes to the whole love your neighbor, don't love your neighbor, right? My neighbor put up a fence that I can't stand. So I'm going to put a fence up, on my property line. And there's going to be this in between them. And it seems like a great design solution, but it is actually one of the most hazardous fire situations that you can have. So work it out with a neighbor, right? Figure it out. Bring them to a winery. Start having a couple glasses with them and talk them into, working as a community. And using metal fencing, step it up. Okay, I know wood fencing is more cost effective, but metal fencing could save your home, both of your homes. Welded wire mesh and link fencing is fine too. If you don't like the look of link, which I get, people want to grow stuff on it, welded wire mesh is great. Finally, I want to put in a plug for trees. Healthy trees provide such an important cooling effect. Please don't avoid planting trees. Plant lots and lots and lots of trees, lots of large shrubs. These are things that we need. Just manage them. They're in a garden, manage them. And finally, if there's only one thing that you're going to do in your landscape, whether or not you're even concerned about fire, the most important thing is to build your soil health. You want soil that looks like chocolate cake. One of the great ways to do that is to add compost and worm castings, but also to plant densely and diversely and to not overwater, keep them healthy, and you will be building resilience in the landscape, not just for fire, but for all the things that we are facing right now that are environmental considerations. So I'm happy to take questions. Unless there's stunned silence.
I always feel a lot of shade listening to Pam about my house. Does anybody have questions? I know. Oh, there was a question, Pam, about, I think it was tape on the joist. Was it underneath the deck? The tape, yeah.
The metal tape on the joists, because what happens is, if you think about a deck, right? You have, imagine you're doing a bird's eye view of your deck, okay? And you're looking down on the planks that are covering your deck. This gap right here is where the ember goes. It goes down and it burns onto the joists, which are connected into your home in most cases. And so these are the things that bring that fire up to your home. So you remove the decking on top. I mean, this is the thing. You remove the decking on top and you use a metal tape. And there's a particular tape, a bitumen tape, and you can ask for it. I want the fire tape, and the tape goes down on top of the joists. The other place that you want to be considering consideration is the gap between the deck and the residence. There's usually like a small gap there that also has space for embers to gather, especially if you're allowing buildup of any kind of debris in that spot. So you want to keep that really free of debris right there, and possibly even put a metal flashing or a metal threshold, you know, on the interface of the door to the deck.
Question. Is the presentation that you shared, is that available online?
Yeah, I think that we, oh, sorry. Hey, Pam.
Yep.
Did you say something? Oh, okay. That if we had recorded, or you have one that's similar that's recorded anyway.
I do, and you also are recording one. So I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have we do lots of classes on
Put it
there.
on the website too, our website.
What website?
Oh, sorry, Carmel River Watershed.org. And I'll give you a card too if you want. So you have the website. Yes.
Actually, she's coming for a visit. Oh, now.
Oh, sorry. They want to know when you're visiting again, Pam.
Yeah.
I'm coming up to Carmel. I see Rami Allen is on and she is one of our professionals in the area. And so when I'll be back.
Yeah. See you then.
Yeah, question back. Yeah.
So I have heard that lattice underneath the deck is not a good thing, it's wood is carrying it up, but it also keeps the weeds from growing underneath the deck. I guess I've seen the corrugated metal. Is there anything else that's more attractive that you can use? And then I guess the second question is the Trex, something like Trex, good for that 5-foot perimeter.
It's up.
We don't have enough information about the current state of the mixed media products. So Trex is one of them. Next Wood, you know, they're mixing plastic and polymers with wood chips and that kind of stuff. I don't know what the current ratings are of those products, but you will need to read that when you are going to do a Trex deck, or a Trex fencing or Trex whatever. I used to be a huge Trex fan. And not just Trex, I'm using that generically like tissue. But that kind of material has its place in landscaping. In high fire risk areas, probably not. Probably not. There is, I'm doing a little scrolling through my RAM here in my brain, and there is a I think if you go online and you ask the question of fire rating of decking material, there is a really recent, like 2025 study, essentially, that was done, I think it was by Cal Fire, about these different decking materials. So you can learn more there. We know for sure hardwoods are a great material because they take so long to burn. And this is really the key, is things need to take fire rating, right, is all about how long does it take to burn. It doesn't say it's not going to burn. It just says, are we going to be able to, defend this site and put out the fire because it's taking so long to burn through to, an interior or whatever, where there's a lot more combustible material. So the thing about the decking, so one thing I would consider is doing like decomposed granite, or and it's going to be costly, especially on hillside, right? Because you don't really want to be spraying herbicide under your deck all the time. It's really it's tough, but having some kind of a hard surface, maybe even pouring concrete that's permeable, that has gaps in it, or certainly gravel, something under the deck to keep the weeds at bay, to keep the growth at bay. And there are a lot of weld meshes out there. So that's something else. I brought that to your attention, that if you don't like chain link, there's a lot of weld mesh product now. And it's widely available. They ship it directly to people's, you don't have to be a designer to get it. It's called weld mesh. And there's several manufacturers in California, and it comes in all kinds of designs now. So instead of doing wood lattice, you would do some kind of a metal lattice. And it's weld mesh is the name of that metal lattice.
Yeah.
My landscapers recently told me that gorilla grass, the thing we use, that fine, stained coconut husk, is really bad stuff with fire risk, and that we shouldn't be using it. And then the second part is, you said chip bark and stuff's okay, but what is the maximum size? Less than 1 inch? What?
Right. So you want to definitely be, it's funny, I excised a slide on that from the presentation because I thought I have 60 slides. How am I going to get through it? Yes, 1.5 inches. So these are our recommendations. There are two things about mulch. Okay, size is one very important component, but the other component is biologically active. Okay, the difference between mulch that is dry, not biologically active, regardless of size, and mulch that is composted and is actually biologically active is like, there's almost no comparison. So first, in order to get things biologically active, they need to be small, because biology can't digest big pieces. So you want to be 1.5 inches or smaller. And you want to observe it, like, is this actually decomposing? If it's not decomposing, then you need to have strategies for getting some water on it, or directing rainwater to it, or something, in order to have it start to decompose. That's for mulch that's like, let's say you're have mulch already on the ground. If you're purchasing mulch, you're going to look for composted mulch. And those are mostly small pieces because they've already been through a chipper. They've already been, started to be biologically active. And that's why in that picture that I showed, it looked almost wet. And that is composted, partially composted wood chips are wet when they come. Now, one thing I will say is the best thing that you can do is to get wood chips that are from a tree trimmer that have green material in them. So if you were going to go like the least expensive way possible and also the most effective way possible, it's basically kind of composting in place, and you are getting material that's, you know, nice and wet, which is the green stuff, and that will start the biological activity on the brown stuff, which is the wood chips. So yeah, fresh tree trimmings are the best. And a half.
Not all trees.
Any other
Wait.
questions?
Trees.
Hey, I'd like to make a comment, please, when you talk about the soil activity. We go 180 days here without any water, without any rain. And we couple that I believe we live in the most expensive water district in the United States. In the world.
In the world.
Okay. So we're very frugal with water. So okay. You made a comment earlier about rainwater tanks, and they're very efficient in places like, you know, that'll rain every 30, 40 days, and then you refill. Here, it's a challenge. Okay, 27,000 gallons, 180 days gives you 150 gallons, which you think is a lot, but if you have a garden, it is. So there's a lot of math that needs to be involved, and in particular, the soil activity. I do like the idea of adding the green mulch. I don't like adding it because it disappears so fast. And it costs me the same labor to distribute it one way or the other. But so,
It doesn't disappear.
The chips do not burn high; they smolder on the ground. So it is usually not a threat. Thank you.
Yeah, so I just want to correct the record on something. I actually didn't talk about any kind of devices for holding on to rainwater. I'm not a huge advocate for utilizing cisterns and that kind of stuff unless you're drinking it. So if you are living off grid and you have to drink water, you know, and the only water really you can get is from the sky, yeah, great, cisterns. I talked about directing rainwater into soil, and the soil sponge. So this is the root. It's called green water zone, and you can look that up and learn more about it. But the root zone of plants is the largest freshwater source on the planet, and we need to replenish that as much as we possibly can, which means if we have a garden, we need to be directing rainwater into it. So all the water from our roofs and hard surfaces needs to go into the garden. And that water is held by plants and by soil biology for the reserve through the entire year. And this is something that is widely misunderstood. And I would love for you to invite me back to do a whole thing on how the green water zone works and how we can enhance it very inexpensively and really change our whole dynamic with our, and even change the way we think about how long rainwater lasts. I will say that in biologically active soil, we are holding, you know, thousands of gallons more of water for longer periods of time, far more than any cistern could ever hold. So that's the strategy. And in order to do that, it's, yes, we need biologically active soil that is primed, if you will, by the organic matter, like we talked about with the mulch and possibly with some compost. But the most important thing for biologically active soil is plants. Plants are the things that re-engineer soil to hold on to water to cool the environment. That's what they do. And so we need to figure out ways that we can find lots more places to plant and manage those plants so that we can have this healthy soil sponge, so we can cool our environment, so we're reducing the ultimate threats of fire, you know, in the kind of big picture.
I think we have time for. Sorry.
I had a question about the
Oh, the gorilla grass.
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
the what?
I was told gorilla grass is no good, that it burns too quick. It's very fine and very small.
The gorilla, yeah, the gorilla hair. I mean,
The compost.
if we look at how, well, if we look at how indigenous people carried fire from one place to another, we would quickly alight on, you know, things that look a lot like gorilla hair. Want to try to reduce the embers and the smoldering and the zombie fires. And gorilla hair. First, also, I mean, here's the thing: it doesn't freaking decompose. We want decomposition. I laughed when the gentleman in the blue shirt said, "I don't like to use the mulch because it disappears so fast." It doesn't disappear. It transforms. It changes into soil, and so you are, you know, that's the goal, is to have really healthy living soil. And ultimately, you don't need any mulch, right? Ultimately, your plant material is your mulch. That, you know, you don't need to have anything else. But until you have plant material that is functioning as the living mulch of a site, you need to keep it covered, to keep it cool, keep it moist, and to also decompose. The gorilla hair doesn't decompose. And then finally, the other thing I want to say is, unless you have redwoods, which you do, okay? So if you have redwoods in your property, then okay, you know, products made from redwood mulch, go for it. Mazel tov. I mean, I think that's a great thing. But if you are not in a situation where you have redwoods, why are you using redwoods for mulch? It doesn't make any sense. Right? You want to have something that breaks down as fast as possible. I mean, it could be redwood because it's been trimmed or whatever, but the manufacture of mulch from redwood, I don't understand it exactly. So,
Okay,
Well, thank you so much, Pam, and thank you to everyone. And thank you all for coming and being a part of this discussion, and yeah, drinking some wine and hanging out with us. So
until the very, very end. Thank you for the lively debate and discussion. So hope to see you at the next one.
And we will be posting this on our website, and we'll be promoting additional Science Uncorked talks in the future. So thank you all again.